I read like there was a German colonial period, blah blah blah. We learned a history class, but then this book was the author like used some of the fictional character with a true story, like the people who endured the suffering during the German colonial period. So he was talking about the instrument they were using. He was talking about the German administrator. Was talking about Wiesmann. He was talking about the way the school was transported and then brought back with the characters. Then I was really scared.
Welcome to a new episode of the podcast Decolonial Memories with Dyoniz Kindata. Dyoniz is a scholar from Tanzania, presently working on his doctoral dissertation in Germany. His research addresses the significance and impact of a Kiswahili newspaper named Kiongozi during German colonial rule in East Africa. I'm honored and delighted to be here with Dyoniz Kindata. He's a scholar from Tanzania, presently working on his doctoral dissertation. Welcome to the podcast Decolonial Memories.
Thank you so much, Thomas Fürst. It's also a great honor for me to be here and to talk with you about my project and to share my perspective in this topic.
Let's turn to some personal details. Where did you grow up and what educational path have you followed so far?
Yeah, thank you for this question. As you say, Thomas, my name is Dyoniz Kindata. I'm coming from Tanzania. I was born in Morogoro and then we moved to Dar es Salaam. We can say it's a metropolitan city in Tanzania, and I did my education there, primary, secondary, and higher, and University of Dar es Salaam. And then from there, after finishing my bachelor degree in education, I came to Germany with the help of Catholic Church. They financed my master's studies at the University of Bayreuth. There I did my master's in African studies, and now I'm doing my PhD in Lüneburg. It's in the north of Germany, in cultural studies.
Yes, we'll turn more in detail to your doctoral work presently. How was German colonization addressed in your family, in your circle of friends, and maybe at school? Was it a topic at all?
Yeah, that's a good question because talking about the German colonization in Tanzania has a different perspective. People, for example, people are reminding of German colonization due to his history of brutality and etc. So in our home, people, they don't talk much about German colonization, but we learn at school. For example, in primary school, there are some of the topics about German colonizations, more particularly about the civil war, the war that happened in 1905 to 1907, which is Maji Maji War, where many people in the southern part of Tanzania were killed. So the talking about German colonization, we in my family, for instance, we talked about, but not in a more critical, like there was a German like during that period, but like more intensively, it's not so much. But it is being taught in schools, in primary school and secondary school and secondary school, for example, in the subject of civics. People, they learn, for example, in civics, they learn about the productions of crops during the German, all the schools. So they give an overview. And then for people studying history in high school, then they also go deeper. But generally speaking, in the society, for example, in my family, we talked not very much. but it also depends on the context. For example, I had friends who are coming from Iringa, and Iringa, because they also have these issues with the Mtemi, Chifu Mkwawa, for example. So that some of the family are directly touched with the German colonial history, because some of their parents, of their grandparents were killed by the Germans. So the extent is different from from where one talks. There's some society where their grandfather, they also participated in the rebellion against the German. My family, for example, we are also very far from this rebellion. But generally speaking, we talk about German colonization.
So you refer to the massive colonial crimes committed by the Germans. Why did you decide to come to Germany, the society of the descendants of the perpetrators?
Because I came to Germany in 2019, and during that I can say, like, during that time, the German is not people, they're not always dreaming, like there's this cooperation, because Dar es Salaam and Hamburg, they're sister cities, the cooperation people are coming, but it's not like they can't, people they aspire to come, they can go to England and etc. But for me, I always had this inspiration, because I had exposure to German when I was in secondary school. So the German, they finance German teaching around the world through PASH school. The German, the foreign minister of German, they financed that. We had the German classes in our school, and from there I said, oh, this sounds very interesting, and we had some classes and at school, and saying, maybe later, if I have a chance, I would love to go to German. And I mean, my point was the representation of German, even though we learn in school book from historical point, it's also not very large compared to Kenya, because we also have Goethe Institute there in Dar es Salaam, but the exposure to the people during this with the German, also German culture, is also kind of very limited. So for me, my contact was there from the school, and then later at the university, there was a priest visiting University of Dar es Salaam, and I got contact with them, and from there I said, this is my chance now to go to German. And I really wanted to, for my father's study, to also explore about German colonial past, which is part of our history, because we were also involved. So I say, maybe it could be interesting also to go to German and also have an access, because here now I will have both perspective, visiting the German archives, having been in German academia. I was also in Tanzanian academia, also to be versatile in this. And in the current years now, so when I say current years, it's from 2021, 2023, when people are being now awakened. If I talk more with my friends who finished our bachelor together, University of Dar es Salaam, people they're inspired to come to Germany for studies, for volunteer. We also have Deutsch-Tanzanische Partnerschaft, like the people coming from Germany, they go there, in Tanzania, they also come, but it has been there a long time. But now people, they have more interest with the German, and this is also come also with the law of German in the world now. Where I mean, like growing up, people they were mocking like German. People they have Khrushchev German as tall, German people as like racist, because people they're referring to the Hitler side, or German people they're brutal nature. Right? But now the image has been changed, and this also, which we're gonna talk later about this perspective on how we can work with our colonial past, and which perspective it can bring to both our nation, German also and Tanzania, talking about its people, like the youth now, because now youth is also they are the future. Yeah.
Were there people, let's say, among your family or circle of friends that criticized you for deciding to go to Germany, to the perpetrator society?
the, the first thing was my father, because when well, and because my father, he was kind of privileged. He went to France to study, and then I say, you want to go to Germany? What do you want to do in German? Like, I mean, I don't know, and because none in my family could speak German, like, I don't know, like this interest, even my, like, now it's still evolving, like, kind of, and then later, after arriving, I did my study, I finished, then I told my father I want to do research in German. I said, oh, German, where will you find the sources? Will you even understand reading them? Then I said, I want to do this about Kiongozi. Where can you, I mean, he even, like, when I went back for research trip and say, did you really find out something? Do you think, like, do you get any, like, cooperation, like, so that your project will be, you can realize it in the end? Will you think, I mean, there's some of them, like a vague question, like dealing with this issue. Some people, like, I mean, I cannot speak with some people, but I'm talking for my father, because my father is also a bit old, but like, yeah, so this is also people that are being also, it's not in a bad way, but being fascinated, like questioning, is this thing also really possible? Yeah, for example.
I should point out at this point that you speak a wonderful, almost perfect German, so
Thank you.
it's very impressive. You mentioned that you read some novels in secondary school that dealt with the German past, colonial past in your country. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, so in Tanzania in secondary school, Kiswahili is also a compulsory, like, to all, and in the subject Kiswahili literature, back then I was in, they called in junior as an ordinary school, ordinary secondary school, and we read Ngome ya Mianzi. It's a novel which is prepared for junior secondary school or ordinary level, and then it is set around the context of Mkwawa, so the chief Mkwawa during the German colonial period time, because he was one of the influential. So as a 15 years old, back then I was 15 years old, and reading, like, I read, like, there was a German colonial period, blah blah blah, we learned history class, but then this book was, the author, like, used some of the fictional character with a true story, like the people who endured the suffering during the German colonial period. So he was talking about the instrument they were using. He was talking about the German administrator, was talking about Wiesmann. He was talking about the way the school was transported and then brought back with the characters. Then I was really scared.
You got scared of the Germans at that point, right?
Of the Germans, and also the killings, because the book also talking about the people they were hung because of they were supposed to pay a head tax. Then I was asked, well, why do these people pay about head tax? And if we talk about tax, in our country, it's this different thing. Then I said, why would they then tax people like Hutensteuer? That's why would, I mean? Now I understand, but back then for me it was like I did that for passing the exam, but for me. The novel left me with a lot of questions first, and second I get scared. Then I go, oh, it wasn't like peaceful, like I said, this was very brutal. And then I think this is one of the few novels which still exists. And back then, as a teenager, 15 years old, reading the novel and then analyze it in the class, because I mean, it's, for me, it's, I didn't say, if I'm now speaking with 15 years old, I wouldn't say that I found it fascinating, but I found it enlightened me, and I was scared.
Now, turning to your present work on the doctoral dissertation, in a first step, can you give us a rough idea what the topic is all about?
Yeah, so my topic, I'm in the newspaper studies. I am investigating German colonial newspaper, but specifically in Swahili, written newspaper, which was back then called Kiongozi. Kiongozi, it means the leader or the guide. And as you know, like when we were talking about imperial world, during this time, when you talk about British, when you talk about Spanish and etc., even German, all the publication in the colonial was not allowed to be done in the local languages that the people speak. So in this case, in East Africa, it was kind of special case whereby the German then allowed the press to be written in a Swahili language. So my topic, I'm investigating poetry and photography in German, in German colonial newspaper, Kiongozi, from 1885 to 1918. I'm looking at intellectual tradition and etc. So coming closer to my topic, so Kiongozi was produced during this time for 30 years, from 1885 to 1918, and and during this time, the print technology in Africa, talking about East Africa, was not there. So when I talk about East Africa, we're talking about Kenya, we're talking about Tanzania. We had our traditional manuscript. So people, because the Arabs were there since 10th century, we had this contact, and then Swahili was spoken around the coast, along the coast of Kenya, Tanzania, and also Mozambique. So the people, they had contact, and not many people they had contact with the writing. So when the German came, they found there people speaking Swahili and other local languages. So they came there, and this influence of Islam was also very rampant. And when the German came, because they were also more interested in using the colony for the means of raw material and etc. And then they found Swahili already already rampant or already spread on the area, and the people from the coasts, they were seen to be very educated because they went to madrasa compared to other people who they had all a tradition, which is also fine. So from there they took up Swahili as an administrative language. So they use Swahili for administrative purpose. They established school. The first school was in the northern part of Tanzania, which is called Tanga, and people were studying all subjects in Swahili. And from there, because Swahili was very popular, and then when the German governor von Soden, who was coming from from Cameroon, was German colony to Tanzania, and then he has his idea of establishing the school in the end of 1896, where they founded the first school in the northern part of Tanzania, which is Tanga, and they say let's do it as we did it in Cameroon. So they established the school there.
A German school for the local population, for the young, for the children.
For the children, Tanga. So and then for in the beginning they instructed that the chief and all other local leaders, they should send their children there, and the people, they were sending their children there, and the motivation in the beginning was low, because the people they had a fear that people they will be that the German, they will take their children and the children will not go back. But at the times goes on, like people, they were sending more and more. So this is a newspaper that I'm investigating also.
That's
Kiongozi, Kiongozi. It then emanated. It evolved from Tanga. It was a teacher initiative. So in the beginning, the teachers wanted to communicate among themselves, and that use the newspaper as a forum of communication of what is happening in Tanga. And then
wait a minute, was it a German product, or the
Swahili written newspaper with the German editors and Swahili also?
Okay, but the Germans started the magazine. Okay, what is it, a monthly journal? Okay, started by the Germans in Swahili.
In Swahili. So but before I come with that, the German officers who were working in German East Africa, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, were educated in German. They learned Swahili at Seminar für orientalische Sprache in Berlin. So they took course in German in Swahili literature literature, they learn linguistics, they learn literature, they learn history, they learn geography.
Was it
They-
mandatory for the Germans before they would go to the colony East Africa?
The one which was mandatory was in Hamburg. It's called Hamburg Colonial Institute. That was mandatory. But this one, it was for people interested in, maybe in education. They went there and they learned. Now it's Humboldt University. Ne? Back then it was Seminar for Orientation Sprache. There are also other languages. So some of the people, all of the editors who established Kiongozi had learned Swahili here before in Berlin, and when they were there, they had basic knowledge of Swahili, and also they had knowledge of Arabic because of the association. So they founded the newspaper there. In the beginning, it was more in Tanga, and then later it expanded because people they had interest, they evolved interest. It expanded around the colony in East Africa, in Burundi, in Rwanda, and then even neighboring British colony. They also read Kiongozi, and even in Cameroon, for example, and they were detected like for every publication. The issue should be said in German. So, for example, I found the newspaper here in German, and not at the Goethe University. They at Goethe University they all digitalized all the copies of Kiongozi. And in Tanzania, when I went to Tanzania National Archive, they say I saw this newspaper. They say, where did you find it? They don't have it. And they say I found it in German. Then I have to explain the whole story. So So that the world context, the world context of how the newspaper evolved. And among the newspaper editors, there's one African editor, which was called Alfred Juma, and all other, they were German, like Brand, Uniman, and etc. So when
Dyoniz, who was reading it? Who was the target audiences for the journal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. The targeted audience of the newspaper was the student at Tanga, because who published it? They were student, for example, they were learning special courses, which is called binding and also printing. There's a typing, so students were typing the news. Some of them were also came to German with the German headmaster of the school to intensify their skills of publications and typing. So in the beginning, in the area years, that means in the 1906 to 1907, the readers was in Tanga. But then later,
but the local population,
the students, the teachers, and then later it expanded because people were speaking of Kiongozi, and people, what is Kiongozi? Because the people, they are fascinated, like Kiongozi, when you read Kiongozi, become knowledgeable people, it contains information about the world. So because in the Kiongozi newspaper, there was puzzles, there was a news from the local population, there's a world news, there are poetry, and all of these people that are fascinated, oh, wow. And then maybe I should read this. So the society were divided, divided in teams, like people who reading and the people who hear. So they were paying other people, for them to read the news for them. So, for example, not all the people read the newspaper because the literacy was also very low at the beginning. So this is, for example, me, I don't know how to read. I go to the person who knows to read, and then this person reads it for me, and I pay him the money. And there's also even in the newspaper, there's a person who met the other person who is reading the newspaper, and this person, his name is Shaul, say, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time reading this big piece of paper? And then this person said, this newspaper is called Kiongozi. It informs me of what is happening here in my country, Germany, East Africa, and what is happening around the world. So, this is so awkward. Why should you be informed about what is happening here? We can also hear from our society. Then say, do you really want to know how useful Kiongozi is? And then the person started to read the poem of the person who died in Bagamoyo. And then the other person started to cry. And then say, why are you crying? I say, that the poem that you read, that the person who has been talking there is my brother, say, is your brother? And then, yeah, how can I get the information to go there? Then read this. So the point of saying this one, even though that the project of Kiongozi was a colonial apparatus connected to school, connecting with civilization, like we German, we need to civilize, connecting with the project of what they call assumes this outcome. But the newspaper, not only of performing the literacy among the people, of not only of modernizing the people, but it has this the transformative power of solidarity, because the people now they becoming talking about how do the other people now. What is going on in Tabora? And people understand, like, what is going on in Arusha? What is going on in Lushoto? Like this, the way of speaking of this imaginary community, like talking about Arusha, even though I haven't been there, being informed of what is happening there or what is happening in your area, it was kind of revolutionary. And this is also made the newspaper to be popular during that time. Make the people even thinking of who are they? Who are they? And I think this during this time, during this German period and this newspaper, it's also one can also say it's also became a catalyst of what is happening during the British colonial period, whereby the liberation movement started. It didn't start from the air. It didn't start from the air. Yeah.
Let's look at the colonizers, German colonizers. Now, it seems to me the way that I understand you, it's sort of the newspaper opened up spaces of solidarity, of community building, or sort of even identity building beyond the own ethnic group. But wasn't that a tendency that the German colonizers didn't like so much? I mean, was there some sort of censorship involved? Did they try to get away from this sort of dangerous potential of the journal?
Yes, I mean, the German, they didn't like, because when the people started questioning what is questioning who are we, and then not only questioning who are we, then trying to understand why this happening, why this because they become informed. This is also like in the beginning they have the fund for promotion of Swahili language. Then say no, we should introduce now German language, because this is becoming too far. Then we should do something about it. And I mean, they were concerned. That's why they brought about censorship. But censorship, it came late. It came in 1913, and then the German lost the colonies soon after, and then the newspapers stopped.
When did it stop?
It stopped in 1913. 1913.
That was the end. But there was even still German colonial rule.
Yeah, it's a colonial rule, but it then stopped there.
Why? What happened?
It is also because of the war, and also because of the editors, and but the people, they were really interested to dip it far to get connected with the newspaper, but and because the newspaper was in Tanga, and then later shifted to Dar es Salaam, where the editor Juneman was there for the year 1913, and then because operation of the newspaper was complex, because people were sending their contributions through the letters to the post, and then the work of the editor, they collected it and they sorted out what is to be published, and then the student, they take it and then they published. They write it on the paper, and then they all this purpose was complex, and also they finance people. They were paying like a year contribution. They were paying around 5 rupees, which is around 25 hellers, which is a lot of money during that time. But people, because they valued the newspaper, people, they were teaching themselves how to read. Can you imagine how to read and write through the newspaper? The newspaper was also had some section of how to use, for example, comma, how to use semicolon, how to write about this. So the people, even though like if the post-colonial thinker, if they hear me, they say, "Oh, Dyoniz, you're praising the German." I mean, it is true that the newspaper was was a colonial apparatus, but it had some effect on the people, and we should talk about it. We should. I mean, I criticize. I mean, I'm not praising. I'm not a puppet. My work will not be a value, but we really have to see between the lines also what did the newspaper also perform, and this is which is so special about this newspaper during this time. Yeah.
And can you name what are your specific research questions now for the doctoral dissertation?
Yes, this my specific question is, for example, I'm investigating who read the newspaper, what was the public, and which effect does the and the influence that the newspaper had, and which intervention do the people had, like the news correspondent vis-a-vis the newspaper, and what kind of genre did the newspaper did they immerse in the newspaper? For example, here now come poetry, and how then the poetry being used to voice the people imaginations in the community. In the community, and this is also to do with the political and social imagination during that time. Like people, because when you're talking about Swahili, people writing poetry, it's only dedicated to small few elite people. But what the newspaper did, it gave space to all. Everyone can create everything, and then people, they start to experiment what it means to write a poem, and then they start to write. And if you read this poem, because even though the censorship came late, but through the genres, people, they start to experiment now. And then, because if you write a poem, you write in a condensed languages, you write in few selected words, then the people, they also start to speak against the government. And this tension also become very interesting. Also in my research, I'm also very interested which kind of nuances to the also newspaper in some of the restricted way allow the people to speak against when speaking against is all. We also understand how this the perspectives of the people, because during that time people, this liberation, we are not talking about liberation movement, we are talking about nuances, we are talking about what is not right, what's the colonial government, what do we want during this time. Yes, and another aspect I'm also viewing about the illustrations in the newspaper, because during this time there's also photography, a broad view of colonial photography, imperial colonial gazes, but in this newspaper we found illustration drawn by the student themselves. So people, they were learning in school the drawing, and then they started to practice it, and then they start to represent their own colonial realities through the drawing. It's also very interesting to see that the student, they were copying, they were reading Wilhelm Busch in school, the Wilhelm Busch books, and they were, if you see the drawings in Kiongozi illustration, the figures are quite similar to Wilhelm Busch, and then you ask the stories, the African setting, and then somehow it sounds weird, but you see all of this like. Newspaper being in interplay between in knowledge production, in producing knowledge, and also like the people in this knowledge production, the people that tend to intervene like on how then this knowledge can also be contextualized in an African context. So the whole broad project of my PhD project, I'm trying to understand in what way newspaper written in African language can also form part in the broader project of print cultures in the world. Because if you read the book by Ngungi wa Thiong'o, he's one of the prominent writers in Africa, but now he died late. I'm so sorry for that. He wrote a book about decolonizing the mind, where he was talking about languages in Africa, and and this, if you take the project about Ngungi wa Thiong'o, like literature is being written in European languages, but now we found a newspaper written in Swahili language. Then people, it's interesting. But Swahili was used by the colonial apparatus. But how did then? Now we have literature. Now we have a newspaper written in Swahili. But how was the discourse? But about that time, this is also, I'm also trying now to add more to the to this project of decolonizing the mind. Now we have people, they speak, they write in their own language, but are they thought decolonized? But I mean, it's also very complex to talk about decolonization during German colonial period, because it's far-fetched. Because decolonization movement, they also come from 1930s. But this time, that's why I said, I'm not talking about how do the people decolonize. I mean, people, they didn't know about what does it mean to decolonize. They didn't know, like they really know that we are in hardship. That, like, the newspaper, they rejected to announce the killings of Maji Maji. They even said, please do not send us this news from. They published about the report about Songea, for example, people like the people, they should be obedient to the German government but not to rebel. But if you read it another way, then the people, other publications, they say we didn't publish your contribution because you insult the German government. You should do. Then say, why me as a reader? Because I read. So the publication was denied because they was against the government. Like, people, they were announcing that certain people, they died. There's a famine in the southern part of Tanzania. Why was it? Then I go to the publication, which is the contribution, was denied. Then I go also to the letter to the editor, which they also communicated. So for me, I'm not reading because if you read in one eye, then you will say everything was smooth. People were the intellectual tradition. People are learning how to read and write, and then people are informed. But it doesn't really help us to really understand. Like, it's good, like the newspaper established intellectual landscape, but now it's become interesting now to see the African voices be emerging. This is also I'm trying to
just
establish.
to clarify. All the authors of the text and the poems, for example, they were all African?
They're all African, but the audience were divided. So we had German audience, the German settlers who read the newspaper. That's why in the end of the newspaper was a section called Mtafsiri wa Kidachi, which is, it means the German translator. So it listed all the difficult Swahili words in German, and there was a section called Aussprache, of how to pronounce these words. So German were curious. We also had Chinese. They were also reading the newspaper because there was a section announcement, matangazo. So the Chinese, they were also announcing, for example, I'm selling my chairs, blah, blah, blah. And there was Arabs, because Arabs, they were needing some of them skilled worker as Schreiber, like writers, typesetters. So they were also announcing. So so the audience were divided in terms of the German, where read to be informed what is going on here. Then we have Chinese. We also have Arabs who are also reading for commercial purpose, but the texts were contributing Africa themselves. When I talk about the text, I take the text because they are reporting about country news, the international news where the teacher were reporting. So there was the puzzles, there are proverbs, there are poetry there. There are travelogues, people reporting about their experiences. So people, they were making translation. For example, how is look like a marriage in Kisukuma? How is the traditional chiefs in Sukuma? So they were trying to make a translation from local language into Swahili. People to read. It was really, if you read the newspaper, there's a German scholar who also wrote something about. And she said, her name is Lemke, Hida Lemke, in around 1929. He said, if you read the newspaper, if you read Kiongozi's newspaper, it's not a typical newspaper that we are accustomed to read. this newspaper is written in really typical African storytelling. Like if you read the newspaper, you have an impression that you are reading a story. You're not reading a written newspaper. Like it's really completely like as if we are talking, me and you, Thomas.
Well, that's really fascinating. Thank you so much, Dyoniz, for this information. In the next section, we will turn to the current debates in Tanzania on the issue of German colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of debates about German colonial area do you see in Tanzania today?
Yeah, that's a very good question because now we are getting closer to the contemporary discourse of the German colonial past in today's Tanzania. In the past years, before there was a discussion about German dinosauria, which is when I was still a student, I saw in the media there's a minister came to German, they came to Berlin, and the people they say, people they talk our dinosauria, like
At the Museum of Natural History in Berlin.
In Berlin, and then the debate, but I wasn't like people here in Europe. Back then when I was in Tanzania, particularly in German, they're making museum, they're making a lot of money because they have dinosauria, people are visiting. So, but and then like to speak factually, in the past like 10 years, the discussion was more about dinosauria and can the dinosauria also get back? And then, but now it's also proceeded at the university. At the University of Dar es Salaam, especially at the Department of History and also Department of Archaeology, through the cooperation in Hamburg, Coloniales Erbe, Hamburg Coloniales Erbe, they had the project of exchange of scientific workers to work about this topic, but to speak in international, like Tanzanian media on how the people speak about German colonization. It's more connected also with the physical materials, like German bombers, which are still existing there, and also public spaces which were also inherited during the German time. But
like what kind of public spaces? Can you give examples?
Yeah, I mean, with the public spaces also mean schools, German schools.
So the architectural
the architecture heritage. Even our state house is also a former German. Yeah.
Let's turn to the communities.
Yeah,
Are there certain communities in Tanzania that still very much remember the pain and the suffering through German colonial rule?
Yeah. There's, in especially Iringa, I was also part of this. For example, Charité here in Germany, they are also returning some of the school taken during German colonial period.
Yeah,
for
the
example,
ancestral remains.
Ancestral remains, which were repatriated, were 12 of them. So in Tanzania community, for example, we have particularly in Iringa and the southern part of Tanzania, which the dinosauria was taken. So the people are more or less connected with this history, and it is also in the debate. And people, they also encounter this in the museum also when they go to museum Makumbusho. The
regional museums.
Yeah, regional museum, like in Dar es Salaam, for example, if they go to Iringa, if they go also to Tanga, for example, also went to Tanga, there's also there's a German, it's called Urithi Museum. This in Urithi Museum, they also, I think all of this building is dedicated to German colonial period, where it was a house of a district officer of Tanga during that time. So the debate, especially now, it got like a hot debate during the Steinmeier visit. Mm-hmm. We also had this debate when German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, when visited for the first time Tanzania, the oppositional part also raised this to the government, and they were saying like there was debates going on with Namibia, like people that being given they're being given money, as money, not in terms like in terms of Entschädigung, like to the people, but what is not happening to Tanzania, for example. And then the government responded that the Germany also financing some of the project, and this during that time it was 8 years ago, and during that time the people they were start thinking, because the Tanzania they are very quiet in this this issue, that people say this is it could be like, yeah, we really, because a lot of people, then people they become to digging more of what is happening, during that. But the government gave the political answer that we will not ask for any money from the German of the what is of the killings of Maji Maji, or what is being taken, or and everything. Then it ended like that, but there was still some small movement, but this movement wasn't more left in the academia, and people speaking like a little bit about it, which is different from Kenya. But then with the High Commerce, when he came there, and then he went to the Maji Maji Memorial in the southern part of Tanzania, and then he make an apology on behalf of the German ancestral. Like he apologized
in November 2023.
In November 2023, he apologized of what happened there, and then the people it's really changed the image of not only of German, but on how Tanzania also get along with the German colonial history. Yeah.
But it was only a verbal apology. I mean,
it was a verbal apology. Only a verbal apology.
What does that really mean to the Tanzanian people? Is that enough?
It's not enough, but it's a step ahead. Like German, they also recognize of what is also happened there. It's also a step forward, and then we also saw that there was a movie being made about. It's called the empty
grave.
The empty grave was also made, and the people watched that. So, I think in the next years, we're still, I have a good feeling that the Tanzanians themselves, and I'm also part of it, but in the academia. But my intention, like if the zeal or this intention, if they also come from the people themselves, like not only academia, because academia all do research, like even the activists, then we for the Tanzanian community also themselves, this the issue of repatriations, and also all of that is going to be in a good level. But now it's really sparked a certain interest. Even the media also starting to report. The media like Nipashe, Mwananchi, which in the past years a little bit was talked about it, and this is also tell us on how Tanzania also deal with the colonialism, which is totally different from other countries in Africa. Yeah.
Has Tanzania government taken a public stand on, let's say, repatriation of the ancestral remains and restitution of the cultural belongings from Germany?
Very little. And I can provide, I also talked with some of the chief of Iringa, who also came to German. They did all the work by themselves. They had a cooperation with Charité. The government is, it's doing something, but in a very lucrative way, like in a very diplomatic way. Like it's still, and this is also my appel to the government, like they really also have to cooperate with the community of origin, like especially with the society also who are deeply. We are all Tanzanians. We are attached with the German colonization, but like if we are talking about repatriation, we are talking about they really also had to deal with the local people, the communities, not on the government level, or not only we need researchers, but also work directly with the people, which is also something which is still missing. And if we have that one, and if we come to German like this, we will pressurize the German, and the German can give us back the thing which were on one hand like materials being stolen in the museum, but also giving us access to the people to come here as an exchange, doing archival visit, or doing we can have a artist in residence, but that's like it's not like people that don't have interest, but the people that don't have exposure on, like it's just like also coming to German is coming to Europe, like if it's a kind of bureaucracy. So for me, what I'm wishing, it's not like I'm also trying to blame my government. I'm not blaming my government, but what I'm saying is just like now we try to open up opportunities for young people, for artists, artist intervention. I've also very for research, young researchers, for even schools, even school if they also come, we have like student exchange. They also come, they go to German school, and the German school they also go to Tanzanian school. I think this is gonna be very interesting. Both sides, the German youth, they get this is also what we learn, but this is different. Like they really experience if you take a German student, they go to Maji Maji Memorial, and if they see that, I mean, we talk about it, but people that don't have, like if they go to Iringa, they go to this Mchifu Mkwawa memorial, if they see it, if they go to Dar es Salaam, they go to this German Boma, and there's it was like this. If they go to Tanga, they go to Urithi Museum. I mean, I think it's also gonna change on how we perceive the thing, in how we deal with the politician. The thing is, our politics that people who decide about us, they have no idea of how the situation is. They read, but they don't know how the situation is on the area. Yeah.
In the final section, we'll turn to your experiences and impressions in Germany.
Yeah, thank you.
You have been in Germany for 6 years now.
Yeah.
What are your impressions and experiences regarding Germany's readiness to address colonial legacies?
Yeah, I mean, from my impression, it's with the German dealing with the colonial legacy. It's somehow they call it. It's a little bit zurückhaltend in how also it's also deal. I mean, it's also it deals it in financing some of the projects somehow, but during, I mean, at the university level, this what they call this Aufarbeitung, they call it Deutsche Kolonialgeschichte. There was not much funding being dedicated. Like I was very sad when I went to last year to the Jungarasima. He organized a workshop.
Professor Zimmerer in Hamburg.
Yeah,
yes.
He's a professor of history, focusing on genocide. He organized a workshop about how to deal with the provenance research from a historical perspective. We did much with the German colonial period, British also, but more with the German collections in Hamburg. Medical, botanical, and also medical correction there. So we had intensive seminar, and then he taught us like Hamburg Koloniales Erbe, which is institute also dealing with the German colonial past, is gonna close because the Hamburg city has another priority. For example, I mean, they don't have funding, so it means the workers they're gonna. So I think the response of the German government is still now declining, which is also very bad. If it's declining of funding some of the research projects which are dealing to really find out and to write a new to indicate where was the problem, how was the situation, so that the public can understand. Because now the public know of what happened, but to really try to understand, there should be a mediation, and the researcher they're trying to mediate between the documents of what is happening there to the community. And if now we don't finance this, it means that we're trying to silence the past. So I can say, um, uh, like for every government, the policies are changing, and the priorities are changing, and they're trying to seize up the budget, and which is also happening also in Bayreuth, where I was there studying my African studies. My supervisor, Professor Khalifa Fieke, they also had this project of Kiongozi, the German colonial period newspaper. They also want to have someone from Germanistic student who, because for me I'm African study, also have comparative to have a to investigate about German written newspaper, not in Africa, but to have this comparative view. But they didn't finance it. Africa Class of Excellence, they have another priorities also. This is also, it's for me as a young researcher, also being also in this field is also give me worries to the government. But why don't they do this now? The societies in Tanzania, they are waking up, and now the German is now trying to sleep, and then the government has another priority. I think this is also a problem with them. With the parties here, like the way they treat cultural fields, like we also need this cultural fields to analyze our society. And yeah, so maybe generally speaking, like German, it's in the middle now. In the mid, I don't want to pinpoint which party, because I'm not also very much into party politics. But but I think, like, if the politician, if they also get a training, partial training of this, because most of them also don't know much about it, so it's very difficult to not know much about, to talk about. But they can also have partnership, partnership. And also, Thomas Fuse, you're also doing a great part on this. You're organizing this petition. It's also give awareness. But I think that then the government can also have a partnership with the people who also engage, like can partner with this, and then we can try to establish, like, which area and how much budget they can the government give in this project.
Now, let's imagine you would talk to a German youth, and this person would say, "Oh, I'm not interested looking at the past. Let's forget about this ugly past. Let's just look forward." How would you try to convince this young person that it would be worthwhile to look at the German colonial period?
Because it is humanity. It is humanity, because we are not Germans, as is a part of the broader world. The country of German is also surrounded with other countries and etc. We are talking this on the humanity because German colonial history, it touched the people. It touched the people there in Tanzania. It took some of their way of living, because the colonization, it wasn't a good thing. It came with modernity, but it left a lot of scars. People, they have scars. When you're talking about this, so the scars are there, but how can we heal their scars? So I think to the German youth, even hearing me, to the others and etc., we are doing this not only, like, I mean, German, like, if you compare Tanzania and German, it's a developed country, just almost everything, but some problem, but almost. But we are doing also this in order so that this community could also heal, and also we can also learn, also German can also learn for the future. Yeah, we are aiming for the future also, but also to understand. We cannot look into the future without understanding our past. Where was the problem? Yeah, where was the problem? And I think for the German, like for the Holocaust, there's also being done. Holocaust museums, being Gedenkstätte here in Berlin and etc. We can also do the same thing with the colonialism. and this is also gonna open up the mind on also how the German also dealing with other people, yeah, and also when these people come to German, people they can really understand the hardship that these people also went through in their own country, because Germany also did pass, even though it's one can say it's 100 years ago, but this thing it's this one can also trace there, because it's being it is being there in the community. One can also, it's in the blood of the community. So I think this is also very important, and my biggest appeal to the German youth and to the wider public, like, read what's happening there in the past. Don't only listen to the media, because if the Deutsche Welle or if the Tagesschau write, they're always writing burning topics. No one will write about what's happening when this man also went to. No, because they will write something which will attract people to buy the newspaper, which will make. So maybe we can also try to read some of the books there, and etc. And I hope that the German curriculum developers, they will give more spaces in the curriculum, so that people. I mean, it's good that people know more about Namibia now, because of this debate. But there's also more than Namibia. There's also Cameroon, there's Togo, there's Tanzania, there's Rwanda and Burundi. So there's more. I don't expect like people to really dig deep but to really have an overview. And this we can achieve through the curriculum in our schools, German curriculum. We don't have to feel ashamed. Like there's this amnesia. I mean, it's there. We should talk about. If we talk, then we find solution. If we don't talk, then it will remain in the air. So we have to talk about it. We have to read about it, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Dear Dyoniz Kindata, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Thomas, first for this invitation. It's just my pleasure. And yeah, asante sana.